y'all, and welcome back to my channel. My name is T and I love all things skin and beauty. And today, I know black products, and it's Black History Month, and I love to support black owned brands, especially small owned brands. I am an indie lover, and today I was like, it is almost the end of February, and I haven't really done like an all black owned makeup product video to close off, the month of Black History Month, right? And, there's bits and pieces and snippets of black owned brands that I already use that I include in my get readies and in my, eyeshadow palette reviews and looks that I do. But today I really wanted to at least have at least the majority to be black owned brands. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to play around with my stash and play with some black owned beauty brands. Now, not all of them is going to be black owned. Like, for example, since I have fungal acne, I don't have like any like black owned eyeshadow primers, or I don't really want to open anything new at the moment because I'm trying to finish certain products up when it comes down to like my mascara. But everything else is most likely black owned, like as far as like the base and eyeshadow palette goes. So without further ado, we're going to be giving LYS eyeshadow palettes another chance now that I know about, the formula and how to like work around it. This formula is more on the stiffer side. I think it's pressed very, very firmly. There's not a lot of, kickback, or, it's not as powdery. So, this is the other one too. It's beautiful, beautiful color stories, like very beautiful color stories. So I'm just gonna give it another try and see if I could come up with like a different look than the one that I posted on my channel. So without further ado, let's get into this. Get ready with me. All right, y'all see I got my earrings on. Look, I got my earrings on. I love these earrings. I got them on Etsy. I am like a earrings handmade type of girl. Like, I love earrings that just have a lot of character. So today I got my little, my black girl magic afro earrings. But anyways, I'm going to go in with NYX, the Yummy Skin Blurring Balm Powder. I'm in the shade 8.5. And I've been hitting pan. I am almost out. I think I have a backup though, so I should be fine. So I'm gonna go in with this brush here. I cleaned some of my brushes, so I am very much proud of myself. One thing I like about the Yummy Skin Blurring Balm tint is that it's already infused with a primer, so I can just kind of skip primer if I wanted to. Now, I did test it out with the actual primer on top, and it pretty much gave like similar results, right? Like I don't think I needed to like create another extra step by also including the non-tinted blurring balm, which is like more of a primer without it being tinted, right? It's pretty much the same thing, except this is tinted. So I can just go on and just put this on instead, and it's like a extra step that has been taken out of my makeup routine. So this is mainly the reason why I gravitate towards the NYX, because I think each brand kind of fits a person's lifestyle and aesthetic, right? And I think for me, my life is pretty much fast paced. Even though I work from home, I do work in advertising. So you already know, like, that is already fast paced, right? But also I kind of preferred one and done type of products. Like, all I need is just put this, you know, one product on that's in like a category of like makeup products like eyeshadow and things like that, or blush or bronzer, and I'm pretty much good to go. Those are the products that I kind of like gravitate towards. I don't like a product where it gives me like instructions and extra steps for in order for me to make it work. You know, if a product is created, like, its function should be easy to use. Danessa Myricks is truly a brand that I gravitate towards, and also because of the innovation. I think Danessa Myricks is doing amazing work when it comes down to, you know, makeup launches and, you know, and coming up with new, different ways to innovate. For example, her Freedom palettes, she has, you know, ones for, you know, face and eyes that, you know, you can use for, you know, all different kinds of steps of the makeup application process. And for me, I like that because also sometimes I do tend to travel because of like work or just in general. So having that is very helpful for me because I could just take that palette and hit the road. And I'll be like completely fine with just using that one palette. Well, yeah, that one palette or product. So I say, if you haven't tried Danessa Myricks, please try Danessa Myricks. I think her brand is absolutely amazing. And I think, you know, by the time you guys see this video, I'll probably already have the Natasha Denona palette. I look already up for dramatic and soft. Basically her eye sculpt and texture, 2 palettes that she came out with last year. And I think in my video, and especially in my Byredo video, I kind of, you know, talked about, you know, Pat McGrath and about how Black-owned brands, or just small brands in general, the ones that aren't backed by, you know, a big name, they don't have much support when it comes down to investing and funding. And so I definitely noticed some changes happening in Sephora. I'm using the Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Instant Retouch Concealer. Listen, Fenty Beauty, she owns 50%, so I'm taking it as Black owned. But anyways, I think, you know, observing different brands kind of like move out of Sephora, it kind of speaks for itself, right? You know, you have, you know, small brands that have a hard time to stay relevant in a foot traffic space at a retailer. Because if you're going out of your house, out of your way to go out of your house to go to a retailer, obviously you know exactly what you're trying to find or what you're trying to look for. Because if you didn't, you probably would have done some online shopping, right? And so I think for, you know, small brands that move into, let's say, Sephora, and they've done direct to consumer ever since they've launched, have a hard time staying in Sephora to make it work. I'm gonna go in with the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Liquid Blurring Balm Mattifying Setting Spray. This, my favorite, one of my favorites. Like, I'm not I'm not joking. This lasts. This makes your makeup last all day. When I mean all day, I mean all day. You may think that you're greasy and sweating. Let it do its job. It will completely go away. It will completely go away. And so this is definitely going to be a setting spray for me to use, especially around the summertime, because that's when my my skin starts to change. It becomes a little bit like combination skin. So like I do like sweat, especially like I don't know how the summer's gonna look like, but the way winter is right now in New York, ooh, it might be hot. It's going to be a hot summer. But yeah. Anyways, like I was saying, it's really hard for small brands to stay in Sephora because one, they still have to pay Sephora through their contract in order to keep their shelf, because Sephora takes a portion of their sales that they make at Sephora, right? Which makes sense, right? I don't know how much the percentage is, but it makes sense if a brand is making, momentum, who has a big following and has a lot of time in the space to be relevant, to then, possibly go into Sephora. And, maybe it'll work like it works for LYS, it worked for some brands to continue to stay there and be relevant without even being like a luxury brand, right? Or a well-known fashion house brand and things like that, right? But basically, it would benefit both sides if the sales were there. If people are gravitating towards their shelves to, get their product, because they will be making revenue, the brand, and so would Sephora. However, you're starting to see some of these brands come out of Sephora. Some of them are, unfortunately closing, like Unapologetic closed around September of last year. And it was really because, one, they didn't have enough funding or investors to fund into the brand, and they moved into Sephora too quickly. And even the owner said that as well. Unapologetic is a Black-owned brand, and unfortunately, that was one of the brands that were Black-owned that ended up shutting down, ended up closing. And, it's unfortunate. I hate to, read about, things happening like that. And then you have other brands that are still there. It's just that, it doesn't benefit them and it's not benefiting Sephora. And so they're choosing to be on their way out and have some of their products on sale. Some of them are like 50% off. You can tell when Sephora is getting rid of a brand when they're on sale and they're not restocking, especially online. And so one of them was Rose Inc. And, Rose Inc. is definitely different. She is a model, who, decided to create her own makeup brand. I believe she's British. British model. Rosie Huntington Whiteley. And, she was in Sephora for a while now, and her company, at least, the company that she was a part of, filed for bankruptcy. So Rosie was part of a joint venture with the company NYX Inc. But in August 2023, Amyris filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So it was a venture that was filing for bankruptcy. And so as part of that bankruptcy proceedings, Rose Inc. was sold at auction in December 2023. So the buyer was AA Investment, and it's a Hong Kong-based asset management firm which purchased Rose Inc. for about 2.5 million USD, basically US dollars. Following the sale, Rosie Huntington Whitley stepped down from the brand and is no longer involved. And so, in short, another example is that, you know, it could go different ways. It doesn't, I'm not saying that all Black owned brands end up, you know, having struggles, right? It's has to do with, you know, either the timing, it has to do with marketing, it has to do with making sure you're on top of trends and making the right decision of whether or not if you want to move into Sephora or continue to do direct to consumer. A lot of the times you have brands that are already have their loyalists, their, you know, audience there who are, you know, it doesn't take, you know, the time and effort to say, hey, I'll just order online and get it there, right? And I think for those audiences that are like, you know, I can wait for shipping, I can wait for it to get delivered, it's fine. Those are your loyalists. Those are your customers that are always going to come back no matter what, because like you don't have to be in the store in order for them to support you by, you know, having them buy your products, right? Or buy your, you know, your new launches and things like that. And you see that a ton, especially in the indie beauty space. And so speaking of indie beauty, Melt, right? You have Melt that decided to go into Sephora, which to be honest, I didn't think that was a great choice for them. I'm going in with the Juvia's Place cream bronzer. Everything that so far that I'm using right now is Black owned. Black owned. But yes, I don't think it was a great choice for them to go into Sephora. I think one, they have their own brand and they have their own aesthetic, and that might not fit, you know, known customers that go to Sephora to shop. One, I think Sephora also has their own audience, and that is, you know, the day-to-day consumer who are shopping for prestige, maybe high-end brands, right, that are at Sephora. Also, Sephora can be very, very busy. And it can be also overwhelming. So I don't think that would be like an appropriate audience or an appropriate environment for a brand that is small and indie like Melt and Rose Inc. and Amicole to flourish, all right? Because one, you have to be already relevant. You have to have your backers and investors in order for you to, one, continue to stay at Sephora and pay for your shelf space, and to see that revenue coming in, whether if it's through new product development, whether if it's through, you know, different adventures that a brand normally makes. And also, you can't just depend on Sephora. You know, you have a lot of these brands like LYS who have a great social engagement when it comes down to their brand and their activity. And they post pretty consistently. And I think having that social engagement has also helped LYS stay in Sephora. They also still have their website, and they have other areas of, you know, sales that they're benefiting from. So for example, they had, you know, been on, I believe, TikTok for some time. You could also say that with Juvia's Place too. They've been in Ulta for like a while. They've been in Ulta, and like I think also because Juvia's Place is also a big known brand, right? That, you know, they're always going to flourish. I feel like it doesn't necessarily matter about, you know, whether or not if they will continue to stay relevant, they are still relevant. And I think it's because of the product innovation, it's because of their social presence. They also have a TikTok shop as well that has been doing very, very well for them. And so for me, there's a lot of areas where, you know, they can make it work, these brands, and they're able to basically continue to get investment or to get the funding by, you know, utilizing other sources of income, let's say. And I think a lot of these brands go to Sephora thinking that they're going to get exposure, which they do, but it doesn't really benefit them. And I don't know if it's because, you know, Sephora has like a different contract than Ulta. That could be a thing. Maybe it's less at Ulta. Maybe they take less than Sephora does. But again, you have to maintain that. And I think Sephora isn't the right space for these indie small brands to flourish. I think that's where they somewhat die. Because Melt, you know, for some time we've noticed that one, their launches weren't consistent, especially when it came down to the formulas. And I don't know if it's because of the fact that they moved to Sephora. Maybe they found out that their audience has like a different formula taste. And so they ended up changing the formulas, and they've changed it a couple of times to the point where there will be a launch of a eyeshadow palette and the formula will be good. But then the next launch, all of a sudden, that formula would change. And so I think a lot of people became really annoyed. I'm going in with the LYS blush stick and focus. I forget the name of these, but they're basically a blush stick. And I also love their packaging, by the way. I love the triangle aesthetic that they have. Another thing is the packaging. Packaging is going to help a brand flourish. It's going to also really have them stand out. And LYS is definitely doing that for sure with their packaging. It's very unique to them, and it's pink, it's, you know, gold, it stands out. And so that could also be another reason why this is just working for LYS, right? But like I was saying, I think, you know, when these brands go into Sephora, they do struggle, and, you know, it could be, you know, one of the first deaths of a brand. And that is, you know, moving out of Sephora and having things on sale like Melt did, like Rose Inc., like Sima Hayes, you know, Beauty. All of their stuff was just on sale one day, and it was like 50% off. And I guess it's to help Sephora make the rest of the revenue so they can pay out of their contract or something. But some of these brands are now going back to direct to consumer, which is just being on their website, you know? And I honestly think that works. Like, you don't need to be at a Sephora to honestly make it work. Again, I think the audience is different. It's very much different than, you know, your loyalists or, you know, consumers that it doesn't matter to them that they're shopping online and have to wait for it to ship to go all the way to their home in order for them to try it out, you know? And so I hope that stops. I hope these small brands will look at what's going on with some of these brands, and they'll take a hint and they're like, you know what? I don't think we need to move into Sephora, or I don't think we need to move in Ulta. Now, it also depends on, you know, the brand and again, the owner, the momentum, and how relevant and how popular the brand actually is in the makeup space, because it's very saturated. That's another thing. It's very saturated. It's really hard for brands to really stand out in the space. And, you know, consumers tend to be burnt out when it comes to all of these, you know, makeup launches, and you know, there's a brand doing a similar thing that another brand has done, and it's just hard. And I can say this too as like a regular consumer. Like, I just started this YouTube channel and I have been consistent, which thank the Lord, I've been very consistent. But I could speak for myself. Sometimes you have your go-tos. You don't want to feel overwhelmed. Also, you have your own type of style or aesthetic. And, you know, a brand might not fit your aesthetic. You know, you might want to continue to use your faves. And that's fine, right? That's how consumerism typically works, right? It depends on the individual. I'm going in with Mented bronzer and Yacht Life. I say Mented is still Black owned. Even though what happened, I still say they're Black owned. And speaking of Mented, right? Another thing that happened to a Black owned brand is that, you know, we've kind of, you know, we weren't much really surprised, because I think during that year, there were a lot of, you know, Black owned brands that just announced that they were closing, which was very unfortunate. But I want to talk about Mented, and I also want to talk about Beauty Bakery. So Mented basically was founded by KJ Miller and Amanda Johnson, right? And after the brand was acquired by Westlake Capital Partners, which again, in order for a brand to survive, is you have to have the funding, you have to have your backers, you have to have investors, right? And so the only way would be to have investing in a venture capital or a private equity firm. That's really the only way. And so Mented was acquired by Westlake Capital Partners in April 2024. And KJ Miller, one of the co-founders, they remained involved in the business. And so she now serves in a leadership role, president, CEO, within the portfolio that includes Mented. So we're talking about the portfolio. So it could be other brands within that portfolio besides Mented. Going to Beauty Bakery. When Beauty Bakery announced that they were closing and that the owner just didn't feel happy or just wanted a change and didn't want to keep her brand. And you do have, you know, that type of situation where an owner doesn't want to be an owner no more of a brand. You know, they want to do something else, go on to do other things. And that is absolutely fine. However, for Beauty Bakery was founded in 2011 by Kashmir Nicole, right? And in 2024, the brand was acquired by Westlake Capital Partners after a period of announced closure. So Kashmir Nicole is not involved in the day-to-day operations under the new ownership, but she still does consult Westlake about the brand's transition, right? And so she stepped down from running the company for full time and is pursuing, you know, personal things, right? Personal opportunities, let's just say that. So that happened, but then Beauty Bakery is now under the portfolio that also has Mented, that KJ Mitchell, KJ Miller is, managing. And so I still like to call them Black-owned brands just because KJ is continuing to manage them under, the West Lane Capital partners under them. And she's still considered the president and CEO within the portfolios. That also includes Minted. So she is, I believe, also the president and CEO now of Beauty Bakery, since she is also managing that brand. So you do have certain happy endings when it comes to, Black-owned brands closing, struggling. You do have somewhat happy endings, right? But that also involves where, unfortunately, you need an investor in order for the brand to flourish. And so another thing is that some of these brands do end up getting investment from private equity firms. And private equity firms is basically, they'll come to a business and they're like, hey, we think that you're worth this amount. We would love to, invest in your company. And, a lot of times, especially for a Black-owned brand or a small brand who doesn't have funding, and it could happen both ways, just like I said, Rose Inc. We're also talking about LYS Beauty and, Melt. There's a lot of brands that do leave Sephora because they don't have enough funding, or they're just not getting the engagement or making enough revenue in order for them to, stay at Sephora. And so a lot of times you have another situation like Black-owned brands and other brands who end up, getting investment from private equity firms, because those are pretty much the only company that would probably invest in a brand, right? And like give them backing. And, really it's just for them to continue to like invest in you so you can make money for them and their, shareholders, right? But they can choose to back out at any time. And it could be because maybe your numbers isn't showing what they think it would be if they had invested in you at that time, right? And so now we are talking about Pat McGrath. Pat McGrath had an investment with a private equity firm. And I forget the name of it, but it was, I think I want to say 2018, 2016. Let me see. All right, so yeah. And basically in 2018, they got investment from Zoro. It's hard for me to pronounce that name, but it's basically a French private equity firm. And they made a $60 million minority investment in the company, valuing it at over $1 billion. And during that time, we only had 3 motherships. Pat McGrath was only a brand for like maybe 3 or 4 years at that time. But for that, and like thinking about now, like the present, that was the beginning of the brand. Because if you think about it now, we have about 12 motherships now. They said with like all of, Pat McGrath selling out of like all of her, launches, she's doing fashion runways. People are buying out her motherships like hotcakes. We have, the 007 shade being sold out. People are obsessed with like her lipsticks, her liners, her mascara, and all this stuff, right? And so I guess they were like, hey, we want to invest this amount into you. I think you're worth at this amount, right? Which was $1 billion, right? And so this brought total internal funding for around like 88 million when it came down to them investing into their brand, right? But they exit in 2021. Okay, so it's probably like maybe I want to say, if we thinking about like if it was 2018, it didn't really take that long, like maybe a couple or like a few years for them to like back out. And then they ended up selling their stake for that they had in Pat McGrath to another venture, to another private equity firm, right? So that also led to the whole, bankruptcy, right? Because they sold their stake to another private equity firm half the price that they said that Pat McGrath was worth, which was $500 million that they sold it to another private equity firm. So that kind of triggered the whole bankruptcy thing. And then you have Pat McGrath apparently not paying her loans that she got from the brand and a bunch of like other things. It was just really, really messy. But basically in 20, like, I guess you could say like to, this year, they were trying to sell the brand's assets and everyone was like, oh my God, like what's happening? What's going on? Oh my God, no, Pat McGrath, oh my God. And then this is why Pat McGrath is going to close, because of Pat McGrath. Because, she doesn't, make affordable products, and that's why her brand is closing. Like, it'll be like one of those, and it's like, one, Pat McGrath doesn't owe you affordability. That is her brand. How you telling Pat McGrath that the reason why this is happening to her is because her prices are too high? Why does that opinion matter when the whole point of her brand was to be one of the first Black-owned luxury brands, especially high-end fashion brands, right? Why is the price the thing that made her get into this situation? Pat McGrath doesn't owe you any affordability whatsoever. And so that kind of irks me, because there's so many reasons why this could happen to a brand, right? And one, it could be that the private equity firm at the time, and this is what they do, they look at your catalog of sales and see what has been selling out the most during that time. Especially when we get, a little bit closer to when they backed out, it was Divine Rose. Divine Rose was one of the top selling motherships. Okay, when Divine Rose mothership came, it sold out like hotcakes. On top of that, not only did we do Divine Rose, we did, the mini palette of Divine Rose, and then we did Divine Rose 2. And it was just a lot of Divine Rose happening. Just a lot of Divine Rose. Okay, a lot of mauve, a lot different variations of mauve and pink color stories, right? That wasn't in the beginning the color stories that Pat McGrath's motherships had at the time. Like, we had so many different types of color stories. I'm talking about, cool, warm color stories that were neutrals. Like, if we don't talk about the beginning, we have Mothership 1, Mothership 2, Mothership 3. All of them look different. Like, yeah, it was kind of the same concept, but only by a little bit, right? Because there were different variations or different undertones that the color story was trying to represent at the time, right? And every single color story that they released was unique. And it was unique. Some of them were very colorful. Like, if we're going to talk about that, let's talk about Subversive, that palette. Like, come on. Like, at that time, Pat McGrath was doing it. Like, she was definitely doing it when it came down to the motherships. And I really think, you know, having the private equity firm dictate on, or consulting the brand of like, hey, this is selling out a lot more. By the way, I just went in with Minted, Blush, and Clay Too Much. And now we're going to move on with the powder. I'm gonna go in with Fenty Beauty Bright, the Bright Powder, Bright Fix in Peach under my eyes. And we're gonna move on to the eyeshadow. But I think having them consult the brand was I don't want to say the downfall, because I think, number one, a lot of people were speculating that Pat McGrath wasn't involved. But if you want to think about like whether or not she was involved or not, she was at least involved enough to stop the sale from happening and then to, file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Unlike what happened with Ulra Beauty, where, she took a break because obviously, Sharon Shooter was just doing so much for the brand. She had one of the most successful foundation launches that had so many shades, to the point where it was like, at this point of time in the makeup industry, in the makeup community, we need to have inclusivity. There is no excuse for you to launch a foundation and the shade choices are very lackluster and not inclusive. And then you're like, oh yeah, we're going to test this out to see how popular it was. We're going to extend the shades. No, you should have extended the shades then. Because look at Ulra Beauty. Look at Fenty Beauty. You know what I mean? Like, and then you have other brands who are doing like a great job, who have, a lot of different shade ranges that are not Black owned. Look at MAC, for example, MAC Cosmetics, Makeup Forever. They have some, some good shades. It's more than what we have seen. And so I think it was very sad to see, one, she's stepping down to take care of her health. She thinks that she has people in place to, care for her brand the way that she would care for her brand, only for it to just go completely downhill to the point where they had to close their UK website because they just weren't fulfilling orders. People were still putting orders in and it wasn't getting delivered for some time. Like, we're talking about months to like a year of it not being fulfilled. And, so you have that. And then, Sharon Shooter is just, resting, taking care of her health, only to find out that they literally just sold her company right from underneath her. And now she stayed as the founder of the brand. And like, she had other projects that she did, which was under the Sharon Shooter line, that was more into the whole, like, I guess you want to say, I don't want to say like clean beauty aesthetic, but it was basically just the type of makeup that were just like one and done. That was just like, very natural. I'm trying to think of the actual word for it. But it's just you know, wasn't full coverage, right? It was just very natural, very, you know, for that to fit into that other aesthetic of, you know, makeup consumers who prefer that. And so like she was still involved. It was just that she wanted to take care of her health, and so she stepped down. Only to find out that her brand was sold right from underneath her. And then it was actually sold to NYX Beauty. And that was also, they never did like beauty brands at all. Like this is their first beauty brand, and we'll get to that later of like how it's going and, you know, moving along with them being in control of the brand now. But basically, they sold all of Oma Beauty's intellectual property and brand assets, and reportedly addressed it, you know, outstanding debts that they had, and about like, you know, there was like a $6.2 million loan and things like that. And so there were other investors that Oma Beauty also had. Like Oma Beauty had investors. So we still don't know till this day exactly what went wrong. All we know is that it went downhill as soon as she stepped down to take care of her health. Okay. And so her past investors was Unilever, which owns a lot of brands under them too, which is crazy how you had all these investors and it still happened, you know? And so once that happened, they decided to do like a relaunch, and all of a sudden there was a post on their Instagram, and, you know, they were saying that, you know, we're going to fulfill people's orders that we've been waiting for years to get. And there were some people who still didn't get their stuff. You know, we'll get to that later, especially with content creators who did, you know, sponsor ads for Oma Beauty that didn't get paid, also came to light. And it was just, they were doing something shady behind Sharon Shooter's back. Let's just say that. And so, you know, Sharon Shooter, I believe, she also filed I believe it was a legal dispute or like a lawsuit against Mark After Beauty and other parties that were involved in the selling of her brand, because she didn't know that her brand was being sold. She had no say. No one let her know that they were going to sell her brand until it happened. And so she filed a lawsuit against the sale, and basically alleging that the sale of Oma's assets was handled improperly and that she was effectively pushed out and unaware of the transaction until after it happened, right? Now, unfortunately for Sharon Shooter, you know, during that process of, you know, trying to file, you know, the lawsuit and to get her company back, ended up passing away. She ended up passing away in August. And it's just sad, really sad, because, you know, she stepped down to take care of her health. And she thought that she had people involved that would take care of her brand. And it just wasn't it. It just wasn't it. She ended up dying. So, like, we don't know if it'll ever see a jury, that case. But we can see that karma is still working in Sharon Shooter's favor. And to everybody who really cared and loved the Oma Beauty brand, because it is not going well there at all. At all. People, oh, the girls are fighting. Oh, the girls are upset. The girls are pissed, okay? Because when it was announced that Sharon Shooter passed away, everyone, all of the influencers, content creators, people that she worked with in the past were, you know, giving their condolences, making sure that she got her flowers, her accolades, and, you know, just making sure that everyone knew how much she meant in the makeup community, in the beauty space. And we were wondering, you know, what's going on with, you know, Mark After. Beauty? Like, are they gonna say anything? Is the Uma Beauty IG page going to, I don't know, say anything? And like people were waiting and waiting and waiting, and people were in the comments like, y'all ain't gonna say anything, y'all not gonna give your condolences, to the point where people were literally commenting their condolences for Sharon Shooter, because it seemed like they were ignoring the passing and they just wanted to like make it go away and wait until it died out. But then they realized that wasn't going to happen until they acknowledged the passing of Sharon Shooter. And so they did, and it wasn't great at all. It was just like a black screen with some words, just giving condolences to, you know, Sharon Shooter's family, and just not mentioning her accolades, you know, how big of a pillar she was. And I think it's because like they didn't care. That's just my opinion. They didn't care. They literally allegedly stole her brand, right? Right from underneath her. So it's like they didn't really care about her passing. And then people were also mad at the condolences that they did, because it was just like a simple like, here you go. Y'all wanted us to say our condolences, here you go. And that was that, right? So people were mad, and so they took that down. They took it down, and it just even made it worse. It made it so worse. I don't have any eyeshadow primer. I'm going in with NYX. But we are going to move on with the LYS eyeshadow palette. I'm gonna go in with the blue one. As you can see, it's very like hard pressed, especially like the shimmers are, you know, they're kind of chunky. But now that I know the formula just a bit, I have a feeling I can, you know, make it work. I always like to give new products, you know, a chance, because, you know, we believe in like first impressions, and yes, that's nice, but also I also believe in giving brands and products a second chance, because maybe I used it wrong or used it differently that made it not work for me. And so how can I change how I used it previously to make it work, right? Formulas are different, you know, you kind of have to play around with it to just figure it out, to like figure out the code in order for it to work. But yeah, like I was saying, people are not happy with the brand. They are not. One, I just want to know what you think. But if a company brought a Black-owned company's brand, right, and they're no longer involved in the brand, does that make them still Black-owned? Because I don't think so. I don't think that makes them Black-owned at all. But apparently they still have that up on their page, that they're Black-owned. But Sharon Shooter isn't involved. Like, yeah, sure, it's her brand, but it's not owned by a Black-owned brand anymore. You're not Black-owned. So why is it there? Like, I don't get that. That irks me. Why is it there? Take it down. Just take it down, because then people who may have not known about Uma Beauty when Sharon Shooter was still involved, and they go to your page, they're gonna think that it's still Black-owned, and it's not. So I just went in with this shade here on the crease. And so far, it's actually working pretty good now. So yeah, I think it was how I used it, but I think it's looking good now. But yeah, I don't think they're Black-owned, and I do think that they're using the fact that the brand was Black-owned to I don't know, I guess, you know, make, I don't know, make money or something. I really don't know. But all I know is that it's no longer Black owned. They need to take it down, and that's that. Another thing is that, one, they're going through a relaunch and all, but some of the photos that they posted on Instagram, I'm not gonna lie, they look AI. They look AI. They just do. They look AI. They look tacky as hell. They look tacky as hell. All right? They just do. And some of the posts don't make sense. They don't. They don't make sense at all. They don't. I'm sorry, but they're dumb. It doesn't make sense. How can you not tell that it's AI? It's AI. They're probably like, they won't tell. How can they tell it's AI? It's AI. It's AI. And then when you look at their engagement and the views that they have in the comments, it's like, it's not how it was at the beginning of Oma Beauty. Like, it is deteriorating. They are fighting for their lives. They are fighting for their lives, bruh. When I say that the comments are calling them out their name, I mean it. I mean it. People are not happy. They're not happy. All right? There are comments that say, you know, rest in peace to Sharon Shooter. You guys stole her company. That and the third. You're not a Black-owned brand anymore. Sharon Shooter is not involved. Why are you still calling yourself a Black-owned brand? Take it down. There's just so many comments just floating there. And, you know, after the sale and when the whole thing was just talked about, how the news happened about how Sharon Shooter's company got sold and she didn't even know, I unfollowed it so quick. I unfollowed them on Instagram. And I don't know why people are still following them. I just don't know. But to me, that really put a nasty taste in my mouth, and I did not like that at all. So I unfollowed them. But I still peek every now and again, because I didn't even know about the AI until, like, I heard it from, you know, like Reddit posts, and, you know, Jen Loves also, you know, talked about it too. And I was like, what? They took some of the tacky, messed up AI stuff down though. Like, literally, it's so easy to, like, especially if you have the products. Like, you're now the brand. Like, you're Uma Beauty. You should have the products laying around. You don't need AI to generate a product flat lay of Uma Beauty products. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, what are you doing? It's very half-ass. It's tacky and it's unprofessional. And I honestly see Uma Beauty just not being a brand anymore because they're just running it down. They're just running it to the ground. They really are. I don't know what the future is going to be for Uma Beauty, if they're going to sell it to someone else, which I don't even know how that will work because it is a sensitive thing. Unless it's sold to maybe another company or like a private equity firm or a venture capital that already has a portfolio of Black-owned brands. But I don't think people would want to, or companies would want to touch that, because it's not the best investment. It's just not for, like, to invest in a brand who has that much history going on. That is not great at all. So I'm going in with the deepest brown shade here for the outer corner. So honestly, like I said, I think they're not going to last. It's just not going to happen. I don't see it happening just because of what's going on right now. And I guess like they're gonna make it work and ride the wheels until the wheels come off and just struggle until they can't no more, because they are already struggling. They put up a post, and it's a post of, you know, this black woman's back, right? And there's different swatches of foundation. Now, you remember talking about one of the successful foundation launches a brand has ever done, which was Ulra Beauty, right? Why the shades look less now? The shades look less. We had a lot more shades. A lot more shades. And so people were mad about that. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're messing up the brand. This is not what, you know, Sharon Shooter wanted her brand to be or to look like. You know, there looks like it's less shades. Why are there less shades for this relaunch? Is it reformulated? Like, what's happening? What's going on? Again, another thing that is a brand's downfall is transparency. Transparency. And they just weren't transparent enough. So I see this brand not being around for the future because of what's been going on. Like, I have a feeling like something's going to happen to the brand, because it's just not doing well for them at all. And I think it's karma. I just think it's karma. And now back to Pat McGrath, of people saying that, oh, she's not involved enough in the brand, and you know, this is why she's selling her assets, because, you know, her pricing is too high, and you know, all this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, she wasn't involved enough to stop the sale. Because look at Ulra Beauty. Look at Ulra Beauty, you know? And Pat McGrath is honestly lucky, and I know that how it went isn't what we wanted. We still wanted Pat McGrath to still, and like, so did she. She also wanted to stay the CEO, but now she's the CCO, which is the Chief Creative Officer, right? So she's no longer the CEO, but at least she still has like some sort of majority-ish. But I feel like she is going to now continue to be even more involved because of what happened. And I think we're going to start getting a lot of new product launches coming in, which I am honestly excited about. I really am. And so I think if they bring back the whole like beginnings of Pat McGrath and the mothership stories, don't let it be mauve. Please, I don't want another Divine Rose. I'm still going to buy it anyways, but I don't need another Divine Rose because I'm a collector. So of course I'm going to get it, but I don't need another Divine Rose. I have a bunch of them. I have a bunch of mauve stories. Enough. All right. So, I do think that she's going to be more involved. She's going to create new products. There has already been like a teaser of a double-sided lip product, which I am intrigued. I don't need it, but I am intrigued, and I might get it. I might have to get it. I'm still happy that Pat McGrath is still a brand. And all we can do is stay positive and not be negative and call a brand out their name for all the things that they did wrong, and saying that they deserve it, because no one deserves their brand to be sold or file for bankruptcy or to struggle. And, you know, if the pricing is the pricing for you, you're just not the demographic. You're just not. you're just not the audience that Pat McGrath is gravitating towards, because again, they're a Black-owned luxury brand. That's what Pat McGrath wanted her brand to be. You can't have a luxury brand with, you know, affordable pricing. And I think we don't even talk about other brands who are in the same category as Pat McGrath and their pricing. And that's another thing. It's like, you're Black owned, so shouldn't you have more affordable products? And it's like, no. Just because she's Black owned doesn't mean that she has to make affordable products for you. It is her brand. So I'm going in with this hot pink shimmer shade, which is this shade right here. And I just put on my NYX glitter primer. Ooh, okay. This looks pretty. Oh, I like that a lot. But yeah, like I was saying, you know, I think we just need to give some of these brands grace, and just let brands be brands. And, you know, if their price point is their price point, then don't be mad about their price point, and just don't have negativity about a brand deserving this happening to them, because it just makes the makeup community in general very negative and not a great place to be in, and it's not making it fun at all. It's just not. With that said, Pat McGrath was able to get the funding under the new private equity firm. However, she is no longer the CEO. She is the CCO. But hopefully they will allow Pat McGrath to be more involved in the product development, which it seems like she already is with the double-sided lip product that they're coming out with soon. And so all we can do is just be hopeful and patient. I don't know if we're gonna get the baked shades again. Another thing, like I said, that is a brand's downfall in general. We're talking about every single brand would be transparency. We see that a lot. It would be nice for Pat McGrath to say, like, we're no longer doing the baked shades and that's that. Or maybe they're looking for, because Chanel still has baked shades, right? So it's like, maybe they're looking for another factory to develop the baked shades that don't have PFOBs in it. All we can do is wait and see if we're gonna get baked shades at all. But other than that, as long as Pat McGrath is still here, I'm happy. You know, I liked the other mothership that they came out recently, Petalmorphosis. I loved it. And so, you know, if we can't have the baked shades, then we can't have the baked shades. And, you know, it's honestly, it's fine. it's fine, you know. I would prefer, you know, Pat McGrath to remain as a brand, you know. And so that's why I am in content. I'm still happy with the fact that the brand is still here. You know, I think Pat McGrath was really one of the brands to really make me love makeup so much, and the creativity and just looking forward of the motherships and the launches. And, you know, I'm glad that I can continue to have that feeling with the brand, especially being with the brand for so long. Like, I'm a collector. I have all of the motherships. I have all of the launches. Even when I didn't have my big girl job. But that's safe to say that, again, this channel was also meant to spread awareness to, you know, supporting small brands. I love indie makeup. I will forever love indie makeup. It really makes the makeup community and industry fun because, you know, each indie brand is so unique and so different. Whereas, you know, for prestige brands and brands that are at Ulta or Sephora, it's very saturated with the same old, just in a different brand. And so indie brands brings like a different side of the makeup community that you can't find in like Ulta or Sephora, especially Sephora. And so my hope is that one, indie brands, you know, small owned brands, Black owned brands will really think before they move into Sephora. I think you need to work really hard to build a following, to get that engagement in social media, to continue to stay relevant in order for you to really succeed in Sephora, and to also have multiple income streams in order for it to work. That's what I believe in. And you can see it in other brands. You know, look at LYS, for example. Like, look at Danessa Myricks. She still has investors, but she's doing it. She's doing it, and she's doing it really big in an amazing way. And so I am very hopeful that, you know, we won't see any more brands closing. We shall see, but I'm looking forward to see what Pat McGrath is going to come out with, since, you know, she got that investment, and, you know, we still here thriving. So that's that. But this is the look. As you can see, I'm gonna put on mascara. Now, I don't have a black owned mascara that is opened, but I do have a Micole. RIP to a Micole. But I haven't opened it yet, so I'm gonna go in with my About Face mascara. Or I'm going in with my lip liner from Adriana Nicole Cosmetics, another indie black owned brand. And this is the shade. Does it say the shade? I don't know what shade this is. I don't think it says the shade on here because I can't find it. But it's like a plum shade. And I'm just gonna go like this. I really like you know, pencils like this, especially since it's honestly more sturdy, so that's nice. You can also go to the side with it like a regular pencil. So that's great without it like breaking. Okay, this is nice. I like that. I like that a lot. All right, I'm gonna also go in with her lip gloss. This is in the shade Ethereal. My English is not Englishing right now, but I think that's how I think that's what it says. Ooh. It looks really nice. So this is what the shade looks like. And let me see. Oh, stop playing with me. Oh. Stop playing with me. This is insane. This is insane. Oh, wow. This is amazing. That is insane. That is beautiful. That is a beautiful shade. Y'all need to go. Here I go. Y'all need to go and cop that. I am using the Cole Ultra Flex Brow Shaping Gel. Oh my God. That shade was so freaking gorgeous. This is why I love supporting indie makeup brands, because you don't see anything like that in prestige brands. You just don't. You just don't see stuff like that. That is gorgeous. That is really gorgeous. That is gorgeous. I'm still looking at my lips. Like, that is a pretty shade. That is cute, like really cute. All right, I think I'm done. I think I got everything. I think I did everything. I don't know if I want to powder everything else, because the Blurring Balm tint really does really well. And I'm not that oily. So I think I'm gonna spray my face with this. And then one thing with the Denesamatic spray is that you have to pat it in too. So I'm gonna pat it in with this, and I should be good to go. That's all you really need. And then you just take like a brush like this, and you just start to pat everything in. Like so. Because if you don't, it's just gonna look like you have a layer of white powder on your face, and it's just because it just has powder like ingredients in here. And it's just amazing. So make sure makeup will last literally all day. So yeah, definitely if you're going to get this, make sure when you spray it, you pat it in, and your makeup will literally last all day. Look at that. Gorgeous. Like I said what I said. I said what I said with my opinions about, you know, Pat McGrath and Sephora and Ulta and like small beauty brands and like what's going on in Sephora. It's sad, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. Again, like, make sure that you really want to be in Sephora before you make that choice for your brand, or whether or not if you can afford to keep your shelf. And also, you don't even know where your shelf could be. Your shelf could be in the back and you don't know. And it's foot traffic involved. You dealing with, you know, people who already know what they came in here for, and your brand has to literally stand out in order for you to have the momentum, the sales, to stay at Sephora. That's just how it is. But I hope you guys enjoyed my Black-owned brands type of get ready with me. And, you know, if you like this, if you like my opinion, if you want to discuss it in the comments down below, let me know. But yeah, that was the tea. That was my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion. And let's just make this more of a safe, calm space in my corner of the internet. And I will see you in the next video. Remember to love yourself, be kind to yourself, and love your skin. And I hope you have an amazing day. Bye.